Most companies have a GTM strategy, but very few have a GTM that actually gets the money. If your go-to-market feels like a series of broken spreadsheets and missed targets, it's time for a system update. Welcome to GTM, get the money live. I'm Chris Ryan and I'm Lee Parillo, your hosts, and we're here to install the operating system for your revenue. We're moving past the theory and getting into the high-stakes execution of what it takes to scale in 2020 fast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome out to GTM. Get the money live. If you haven't tuned in before, welcome. This show is all about solving revenue problems for leaders, leadership teams, C-suite, founders, you name it. But we solve revenue problems for the active good. So revenue for good, revenue for growth is our motto here. Without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest today, Tom Schin from Build Better Culture, and his brand new swag. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris. It's really exciting to be in an official podcast studio. Mine is in my basement, so I don't know that I could call it a studio as much as it a playroom. So this is probably a fun way to look at it from this stance. But thanks for having me on, and I appreciate the time and attention.
Well, can you tell us a couple things? Where can people find your podcast? Because I've seen your podcast, and occasionally you have musical instruments and all these other things happening as well. So it's really interesting. But I think the first meeting we had together, you were playing a ukulele, maybe.
Yeah.
And I was like, this guy is interesting. So.
I've had a couple of guest appearances on other shows. One of my friends, John Bernadovich, conned me. He's like, at some point, we're going to bring that out. I'm like, haha, very funny. And at the end, he's like, surprise question. You have to play us a song now. And of course, we're like on the spot, live, this and that and the other. I'm like, all right, I guess we're getting a song out. And I totally flubbed it up. But
what song did you play? Like Frozen or
right. Let It Go. That would be really funny. I should have done that. That would have been funnier. No, I don't remember. Creep, maybe?
Oh.
Yeah. It wasn't well done at all. But then he's jumped in as well and got the lyrics wrong, which was even more funny. So anyway, the podcast that my friend Tom Horn and I run is called This Meeting Should Have Been a Podcast. Just really a little tongue-in-cheek, a little bit about corporate jargon just being stupid. We think back to pandemic when we heard all this quiet quitting and all these fancy phrases that come out, and we read all the HR magazines and articles. And so it just sort of became this tongue-in-cheek sort of approach to why can't we just say what we really think instead of having to be so guarded about what's PC in the HR realm. And so it's been a fun ride so far. I've got some episodes that I've got to go in and edit and put out in the market and get some more recorded. So it's been a lot of fun, a lot of time invested, as you know, using the tools and editing both for video and audio, making sure you've got good quality and good guests and good content and what to edit out and so forth. So.
Well, it's a great show, and now there's a musical element, which maybe we can steal the creep as part of this show for a little audio. So interesting. I like the jargon idea. We used to have a jargon jar at the firm, and everybody would have to put money in every time they said synergy or some of the fancy words.
Right.
We speak in acronyms, and in my world, GTM, get the money. That's not what it stands for, but that's what we go on this show. So what's Build Better Culture? Give me the background of the company.
So I started 2 weeks before the pandemic. Good timing. Fortunately, I was in the midst of writing the business plan and putting all that stuff together. But essentially, my focus, it's my solopreneur enterprise of providing leadership guidance to organizations. The intent is that different organizations create a better workplace that their people can enjoy Mondays. And to me, that always starts with the managers and the leaders. They're the ones that have the impact on the front line. They're the ones talking to their folks, motivating their folks, hearing all the stories, hearing the excuses, but they get to build the real relationships. And that's, to me, a big part of what exists in company culture. It's either good or bad or sort of so-so because of those relationships. And so I started this campaign to instill better engagement, better conversation so that employees have something to look forward to on Monday or whatever the start of their work week is. So I do leadership development work, one-on-one coaching style. I have a group format, and then I do customized L&D training for managers. So I'll go into an organization and help them with accountability issues and conflict and performance. and help them really figure out the frame of how to have these conversations, things to keep in mind, things they can teach their own staff. And so that's where I go in and I help impact them and provide them some training and guidance, because it's rare that you see small and medium-sized businesses offering any sort of leadership guidance. They just expect you're a manager, go figure it out. So,
which is largely based around our theme. So you train the trainer, you train the leadership teams. Are you working with the employees directly, or
once in a while?
Yeah.
Usually it's the managers, the frontline leaders or the mid-level managers is who I center around, because again, you have a manager who's got 6 or 8 or 10 direct reports. That magic happens. It's exponential. Not exponential, that's the wrong word, but you can scale it up and see how many people they're touching. You have 10 managers, now you've touched 100 people. So I feel greater impact on that front.
That's great to look at it that way, from that perspective. To me, a company that hires someone to make a better experience for their employees already says something about their culture. Like, are people hiring you because proactively, or are they hiring you because they may have had like a toxic culture, or is it a little both?
I think from when I started, I framed everything up as a culture solution instead of a leadership solution. So that's a really good segue to kind of how we got here. What I learned is that the buyer, per se, in this example, they're looking for leadership solutions, how to make their leaders stronger. And so whether it's having seen something or someone at a workshop, or there's an actual disconnect in the workplace, that usually inspires. A lot of things that come by referral. Somebody will be working with somebody and that person will say, hey, we need some leadership work, or we need this topic. Can you help us out? And I get brought into the picture and we start some discussions, and it usually balloons way more beyond that scope to get into deep conversations about what are you struggling with and what skills do your people have and not. And it's a nice blend when you can get a full room of managers. It means that they really want to help them be more successful. Even the ones who are, I think the best example is the ones that are doing it right, add to the sauce instead of just starting from scratch.
Exponentially. So you mentioned bad hirings. When you hire the wrong rep, or you hire one of the wrong employees, let's say, like, there's a cost to that. There's a revenue cost to, like, the cost of the time that it took you, the training, the investment, their salary, opportunity cost from lost business. But what happens when you hire a executive hire? What happens when you hire the wrong executive? Like, that can derail your revenue engine, I can imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think just as much we talk about toxic employees, there are toxic managers. And it doesn't necessarily show up always as the yeller and the screamer. It's the subtleties and the undertones, or the innuendo that they create by not demonstrating trust, listening but not listening. So when you talk about the cost of having the wrong manager or leader over a producing team, what ends up happening is that people don't want to work with that person anymore. Whether it's a direct colleague or a manager, they stop believing in them. They stop being engaged. They stop giving you discretionary effort. Worst case scenario, I shouldn't say next to worst case scenario, they bolt. They leave your organization. You just lost 5 talented people.
Right? And that's the next to worst. Okay.
Right? The worst is they disengage and they stay.
Oh.
Right? So now you've got people who you're paying full salaries, but you're only getting roughly 80% productivity out of. So if I'm paying $100,000, I'm really only getting $80,000 worth. And that's, again, we scale up. You think that manager has 6 or 8 people and they're rubbing most of them the wrong way, demotivating them, disengaging with them. Maybe you've got really strong benefits and a really good pay structure, so that's why they're staying. So it can really have a drastic effect on what the true ROI is of that manager, as well as what it's costing you.
So, not to bring up the jargon, but so that is quiet quitting, right? People are staying, they're working the bare minimum, and then it's costing you. And that's a real factual number, like 20% of their time.
Yeah, there's some studies around that. I don't have the report with me today, but there's some studies around that. HBR, Harvard Business Review, has some folks that have done some research around that. And so, while it may be 10% for this org, it's going to be 30% for somebody else. And it's really a matter of, we say in the HR circles, culture is what you tolerate. And so you bring in the wrong person and you tolerate their misgivings, their behavior, how they act, how they treat people, the guilt tripping and so forth, the judgment or the how could you and treating people like they're stupid when they're clearly not, then people unplug and they'll milk it. And they'll milk it until you notice. And generally speaking, I can tell you from my recruiting days, people will check out of jobs 3 months before they actually leave, at least. It could be up to 6 months.
Wow.
And so you're getting maybe that 80%. You might be getting less.
So this is a hidden revenue leak for the most part, because unless you're having ongoing conversations with your team, you're not noticing this impact. You may not notice a 20% dip, honestly. You may just think they're tired or having a bad day,
or it's the market, or, here's what's going on in the business community. We blame it on, back in COVID, we blamed it on COVID. And then as we came out of it, it's hybrid work environment. Everybody needs to come back. You find different excuses to rationalize different things, and then people leave. And so the revenue side of this is that you have a sales team all making $60,000, $80,000 a year, plus all the comp that goes along with it. They're impacting the customers they serve, the relationships. Heaven forbid they take those customers with them. They go to a competitor and take that revenue. So you're having to work 2, 3, 4 times as hard to replace that revenue to keep your business model surviving, all because you didn't see the signs that you've got the wrong person in the wrong seat on the managerial side.
So when you come in, do you identify those signs? You teach them to look at the subtle nuances, I guess? Is that part of the training?
So part of what it is the organizations that I work with generally know they have some issue on some scope. If it's a specific individual, we'll usually go down the path of one-on-one coaching, and it really has to involve that person recognizing that, yeah, I've got some shortcomings. I've got some gaps that I need to work on. If you run into that person who's like, I'm the best thing since sliced bread, that's probably not the person that you want in the organization. I think all of us need to aspire to that we're awesome at what we do, but we don't know everything. And we should want to learn, and we should want to teach that philosophy to our staff so they're constantly striving for new information, new knowledge, new skills. Sort of perfection is the goal, but you're never going to get there. So as we think about where you get brought into those conversations, it's okay, here's our gap. We don't know how to have conflict conversations. All right. Let's talk to Tom and see what he can provide us and give us some training on this. And so it's either, we use that conversation with our friend Deb. It's a really good example because conflict happens everywhere, but it could easily be accountability or performance driven, all sorts of different things. And so I come in and I provide some training and some resources and some practical applications, some stories, some case examples, and help them practice out some of this stuff. I think that's one of the biggest things I like to lean on is, how are you doing this now? And then you get a room full of silence until you start calling people out. And then all of a sudden there's a whole discussion going on in the room, which is amazing because now you have a room full of leaders. This is my favorite point in any of my group stuff. They're all silent for forever. One person starts talking, a second person agrees with them, disagrees with them. Now you have this room of people who work together, but never talk to one another about these challenges.
Siloed behavior 101.
Yeah.
No, that's great. When you have a culture talk among leadership, I assume you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I assume, maybe you don't want to say the truth for other reasons. It's an interesting thing to watch, I can imagine, if you're on stage or if you're in a group.
Yeah.
To see what happens. You mentioned that culture is what you tolerate. In your example, you referenced the team. The leader of the team is tolerating poor behavior on the team. Who's tolerating poor behavior in the leader? Because you're coming in to help other leaders. Is it the CEO, C-suite?
Yeah, it's generally the C-suite.
Okay.
I had an interesting, just to segue off of that, I had an interesting question at a recent workshop out in Syracuse, and someone asked, what happens when the team tells you behind the manager's back that they're not effective, but to the manager's face they say, great job, we love you? I'm like, oh, that's another point to dive into. But to your question, it's the C-suite. Your manager should have engagement metrics. You have performance metrics, especially on the sales side. You have a dollar sign that you're after or a percentage growth that you're after, and you have to have that. It's a sales world thing. But there's an engagement piece that goes along with it. If I can demonstrate and measure how I'm plugging in and motivating folks along and getting them to develop into stronger players, that should be part of the metric beyond just the sales numbers. If I have a bunch of great salespeople, that's great. But am I grooming them for the organizational growth, or am I just grooming them for that role? That person wants to grow. And if I'm not feeding them, or at least paying attention to that idea that they want better skills, maybe they want my job someday, great, I should be grooming them. And so that C-suite is really responsible for having somebody that can lead, not just manage. And so what we're describing there is somebody who's just managing numbers, and that works for a short period of time, but not long term.
Okay, but you recommend like scoring, having some sort of scorecard and metrics for engagements. Is the CEO scoring the C-suite, the rest of the C-suite, or are they self-scoring themselves to make sure that they're doing the behaviors every day?
There's lots of ways to do that. I think over time, people get tired of surveys. You need to have a little bit of it. I think the most common piece are sort of 360 feedback components. And yeah, surveys can get expensive, but I think if you're really focused in on improving, you have to have a measuring stick. And whether that's a simple 5-question quarterly piece, a pulse survey, as they might call it, or a really in-depth 75 or 100-question survey once a year, I think measuring where people are at is really, really important. You think about it, we grew up in this grade school, high school, college, everything's graded. You had tests to kind of measure where your success was. Was it perfect? No, but it steered you in a direction where you knew, I'm really good at this, so I'm really good at math, but writing is my struggle point. And so it can be as simple or as complex as you want, but if you're not doing anything, you're like, I feel like they're doing a good job. That's a feeling. That's not a measurable piece. And if you're not going to measure it, why are you doing it?
I would think culture is one of the hardest things to measure quantifiably with data. Maybe I'm wrong, but you're, to your point, you're managing the behaviors and documenting those that are enacting change in people below them. So how does a CEO, if we're top down and the managers are training and helping people with metrics and they're self-identifying things they need to work on, what if a CEO doesn't know they're the problem? How do you solve that problem?
Yeah, that's a big challenge, and it's real. I think there's a lot of organizations that no one's in the ear of that CEO. It's a very lonely seat to be in. They don't have that many people. Maybe in something like an EO, they have other EO partners that they can talk to, and there's other groups like that. But I'd liken it to, I use this framework. It's built off of a Star Wars ride at Disney. It's called the Flight Crew. And so everyone should have this, meaning I've got a co-pilot who's helping me on my journey. I've got a gunner who's helping blast away some of the obstacles. I've got an engineer who's poking out the preventative maintenance things that I'm just ignoring. And so you build basically this framework of a sounding board, both to challenge and support you. And if a CEO doesn't have that, start building it out. It can't just be an echo chamber. That's not going to do you any good, right? If you just want to feel good all the time, great, get your echo chamber. You're going to feel great and your company's going to go in the tank someday. But if you really want to challenge and grow, you need to be open to having other folks tell you hard news and be willing to do something with it. You don't have to act on all of it, but the big things are deal breakers. It's really how stronger companies focus on growth versus sort of plateauing.
Well, the best CEOs will bring in external sources. So again, maybe their C-suite won't tell them the truth because they worry about their job or whatever.
Yeah.
But if they're using external consultants or they have a center of influence, the gal or guy that's out there just like, I can do it myself, it's like those companies never work. And when we same thing for us, we walk in there, we see that early. And we have a real big culture point on our, like when we're looking to do business with people, like you have to be good people. You have to treat your people well, which you don't really find out until,
you're in there. Yeah.
You can go on Glassdoor and see what people are saying, but yeah.
Glassdoor is useful if you have nothing, but outside of that, usually it's people complaining, or you've told your staff, go write us a great review so we can get high marks to recruit other people. So it can be this, double-edged sword. I've never bought into it. You see those things, you're like, meh, this is just not useful. I think what you really find out is, how do you do this? If you're thinking about people interviewing for sales roles or sales leader roles, how are you measuring success? Not just dollars and cents, but from a people side. And the companies that are prepared to answer some of those things, you have an opportunity to move forward with that.
So, Tom, walk me through, you have a series of frameworks, you have a methodology. Walk me through what happens when you enter a company. Are you doing a survey, assessments? Like what happens?
Yeah, I've got a few different tools that I'll use depending on the scenario. So a lot of companies will have used various behavioral surveys and tools, and they try 16 of them, which is great. Sometimes they'll have done a 360 feedback already, and I'll have some information to play with. I will generally figure out, all right, what's the big challenge? Let's hone in some specific questions around that and tailor some very specific questions for them. So almost a mini 360 in and around that component. I use a tool called Culture Talk. It's a narrative intelligence behavioral type survey system. You see a lot of different tools out there. I like Culture Talk just because it gives you a language that people can relate to from the different archetypes we use. And so that helps me assess a communication style, behavior style, how they treat people. And we connect them with how they're good with some of it and how they're poor with some other areas, and they have some room for growth. And so we lean into that language a lot, and it helps people when they have attendance issues. It helps them understand, why am I having attendance issues? Why is this person struggling to get here? It's not that they're lazy. It forces them to think about other things. So I use a couple of tools like that. And then there are times where I'll have to build something brand new to cater to very specific questions. Right now, I have a tool that I'm building out with a client because they have some components to their leadership track that they're just not addressing. And so I built up some questions to sort of analyze, where are we baseline? Then next week, I think we're going to build out a framework on boots on the ground in the meeting with the managers. What are we doing for phase one? And we're going to build it out. And then we'll do some surveying back and forth in terms of just with that management team to sort of construct what's going to be a useful tool for them to retain their employees from a management standpoint. And that includes onboarding and everboarding and a couple of other topics. But a lot of this has to be customized. There are lots of tools out there. It's just a matter of how are you implementing it on the back end? And that's my big challenge with tools. There's some out there people will use and leverage, much like I said. There are companies that have 16 different assessment tools that they use. Are you using it on the back end, or is just this the one and done survey? And I think that's the fallacy of surveys, is if you're not practicing and using the information, great, you gave me a data point. I just paid a lot of money for it. When am I ever going to touch it again?
There's very few one size fits all anything in this world, I found.
Yeah.
So I totally understand the diagnostic. Like, you're trying to figure out the surface level problems, the communication issues that may be natural, instinctual, however you want to name it. But when I've talked to you, I've learned that like that customization, like every time I talk to you, you're developing a different program for people on the ground, and that's the secret sauce, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once you analyze, it's not just run a diagnostic and then run some surveys and then surprise, your culture's fixed. It's it's that level of reinforcement, identifying like what the real problems are, and then crafting.
Yeah, there's no magic wand to all of this, right? You need to have, whether it's, yes, I want you to call me and have me help you fix things. But if you're using somebody else that's doing a really good job for you, it's not like you can wave a magic wand and instantly have a solution. It's not like you can say, I've got a performance management issue. Can you come teach this manager in 30 minutes or less what to do? And all of a sudden, boom, you're fixed. It doesn't work like that. Learning any new skill, if you're going to pick up golf, which I hate and love at the same time, and I hate it more than I love it, but it's going to take me forever to figure this out. Practice, repetition, failure. With golf, it's more failure than anything. But, it's the leaders and the C-suite teams that recognize that things take time. Change is one step, one motion. Master that motion, move on to the next step, the next step, the next step. It's not go to a 6-hour class and you're cured.
We talk about that all the time. Like, everything is a gym membership, right? You can't just show up to the gym and be in shape. You can't just take
Wouldn't it be great though?
Ozempic and get in shape, ladies and gentlemen. We talked about that in the last show. So, but it's the day-to-day grind, and you hear this from every leadership podcast out there. They just keep saying it's the small iterations that will turn into massive impact for companies. And I think that's what you're pointing out.
Yeah. Well, and that's where that baseline where you're starting. And then every so often, I'll interject my own questions. Hey, I'll use it in workshops. What's the one thing that you got out of this? What are you going to practice and when are you going to do it? And I've tried to get folks to send me that note, say, hey, tell me what you're going to do and I'll follow up with you and hold you accountable. They're like, no, I don't want your emails. I don't want your newsletter. I'm going to do this on my own. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to help.
In a real scenario, like, reinforcement has to be part of this puzzle. You can't just come in, develop the
Right.
program, walk away. Like, do you come back quarterly? Do you come back annually? Like, what's the
Yeah, my
methodology?
model, I love that. And it's a great question. I love to go in. I like lecture lab or lab practice, however you want to phrase it. I think of like Bio 101. You go in for lecture, they teach you all your theory. Then you go into the lab and you're practicing, right? You have petri dishes and you're mixing stuff, or if you're in chemistry, you get to blow stuff up. I never liked chemistry. Like, I like the concept of it, but studying all the formulas and the periodic table was a pain in the ass. So I steered clear of that. But it's this lecture lab. You get to do, and then you get here, and then you get to practice. And it's real world stuff where you're talking about your own issues. You're talking about Jimmy and Sue and Bob and Frank. And everybody else in the room, if you're working with a team, they know who you're talking about. And it's a little bit, I tell folks, this is Vegas. We're going to keep this conversation in here. If you can't respect that, don't be in the room. Those real stories have meaningful impact. A, because that manager's working with them directly, is in a silo, and they can only see things from a certain way. The other managers chime in, but this, but that. And so they provide an extra color commentary to things that we just ignore or have processed as bias at some point where we can't even see it anymore. And it forces us to think differently.
100%. Tom, what's the impact? Let's pretend people went through your program.
Mm-hmm.
People went through reinforcement. They did everything in the right order as you as an expert would deem fit. What's the impact that you see? Because you mentioned something like we'll use exponential. It's exponential touch points on how you're helping multiple teams, even in the 20% example.
Yeah.
What other impacts are you seeing? Because this is real quantifiable revenue solving problems that's hard to identify. So what do you see?
If people are practicing what we're preaching, they're seeing an increased rate of retention, which replacing folks in your pipeline has hard dollars to it. So if you can reduce your retention, you decide how much that is. There are higher turnover industries, human services, folks working in houses, that's high turnover, warehousing, customer service, folks with a lot of entry-level help, hourly help, they have high turnover. So you have to have a measuring point of where you're at and affecting those manager skills. So you're going to see a better retention rate there, which is going to reduce your recruiting costs. It's going to reduce training time. You can, instead of training new people, you're training for advanced skills and grooming people up, which it feeds a lot of things. You inevitably, in this journey, build stronger engagement. And there's a ton of data around that. But essentially, there's the companies that are highly engaged with their workforces produce 20% more than regulars. And so if you think about this from an investment standpoint, you're investing in your leaders to do better. They're the model for managers do better, employees do better. So you've got instant role modeling. Our company really walks the talk. You've got higher engagement, which means people are producing more because they see that not only is my boss telling me this, but they're doing it too. And I want to be like them, whether here or elsewhere. It's okay to train people and for them to leave. That's natural progression. You can't solve everybody's needs in the long run. Somebody may want to go into real estate or become a software developer, go back to school and become a nurse. Great, go do that. But I want you telling your friends about us so that they want to come here, grow, develop, contribute. And so it becomes an additional recruiting metric to help you attract and retain the best talent. And ultimately, all these things affect your revenue, because the better your team is, or the more effectively your team is rowing in the right direction on multiple fronts. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. You're always going to have a couple of broken oars, but the more effective all those oars are going, the better your revenue is going to be, because everybody's aligned. So, that's why, again, we circle back around to that leadership training piece. If you can get them aligned, you're getting the most, I think of like a Viking ship where you've got all the oars rowing in unison, or the Roman Empire sort of thing. But if you have a couple of those broken, your boat's going in circles.
I mean, that's go-to-market 101, and that's what the show is all based around, right? Putting people together to solve the real problems. You're taking it from the leadership and solving those problems to help them solve the subsequent problems. So you mentioned an interesting statistic, and if highly engaged companies are producing 20% more versus a company that doesn't know they have a culture leadership issue that's producing 20% less, it's a 40% swing.
Mm-hmm.
That is a quantifiable number that I would put all over your website if I were you. But I
Well,
like it.
and here's the other thing is so many companies, and I run into this, and I've worked with them. We're awesome. We're great. And you sort of have this good vibe going on. Are you really great? Or are you just good?
It's back to the feeling, right? You're like,
Yeah.
I think
If
it feels great.
Yeah. And a lot of companies rely on that. I worked in one organization for a long time, and that was sort of thing. We were winners. We had high growth. Everyone felt good until it wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Until something happens, somebody leaves, and it's like a shockwave to the organization.
Yeah.
There's some reactive point, which again, we've all been there. Like it's happened to everybody, every business. But to your point, you can mitigate that risk because a lot of what you're talking about is risk through proper channels, through proper tools, through proper training. Do businesses, should they bring you in? Obviously, they should bring you in proactively. But let's take SMBs. Let's take people that are trying to graduate to mid-market. Should they bring you in earlier in the business maturity, or do they wait until they get, like, they have to have some level of leadership teams? Obviously.
Yeah, I think there's the preventative maintenance planning part of this. So as you scale a business and as you have your HR front sort of calculating how are we going to grow and what's that going to look like, when you get to that point of building that managerial staff, there should be some markers of what are we hiring for? I know we've talked about this in the past where you can have the right butt in the right seat for right now, but in 3 years, is that where I need to be? Is that person going to be the right leader? No. Plan for it. If you have the discussions earlier, and we can have a quarterly, semi-annually discussion about what that looks like and help you plan along the way. So that way, when you are ready to start training folks, maybe you have somebody who's up and coming that you didn't expect would be a great leader, but you want to groom them. Great. Emerging leaders are the best place to start. Completely clean slate. No bad habits to undo.
Will you come in and help somebody who's starting to build a leadership team? Like, say they maybe have one gal or guy, and like they're starting to think like, hey, maybe I should promote, Willie over here to this, and Jane over here.
Yep.
That seems like an ideal spot for you to come in and just craft because of your HR background, because of the culture, because of what you're doing. And again, I think most people probably come to you after, like you said earlier.
Yeah, when problems exist.
That's when we all go to the gym when we eat too many donuts.
Absolutely.
Different podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, great talk. Any of our listeners today, what's one takeaway that they could start using today?
I think for me, it's stop thinking that you're doing everything right. None of us are. From the donut conversation, I have 3 donuts in the freezer. I'm waiting to eat them. They're from Krispy Kreme. I know I'm going to eat them and I'm going to have to go work a little harder at the gym, but I know it's coming. So stop thinking that we're perfect. Consider the possibility that there are some pieces that you could get a little bit better with. And I use this in my workshops where I tell folks, just because I'm saying we need to talk more about vulnerability doesn't mean that you're not doing a good job being vulnerable. It's how can we do it a little bit better? How can the one person in the room get a little bit better at this and you're going to help them? It's sort of a pay it forward type of thought process. So if you can get ahead of those moments, it's like when you buy a new car, you're going to spend $60,000 on a new car and you're not going to give it maintenance. Your resale value is going to go in the toilet and it's going to break.
It's a solid point. Don't pretend that you're perfect, and optimize on a micro level and have an iterative approach. Okay?
Right.
Like that. All right. Good takeaway. I like that. I'm writing this down because I don't think I'm perfect, and I don't have any donuts frozen in my in my freezer either.
You sort of cringe. There's certain donuts you can freeze and get away with, and certain, like the ones with the cream filling, that doesn't work so well.
It doesn't sound appealing. Sorry,
No.
Krispy Kreme. But what you don't know about Tom is he's also a professional trainer and high rocks and all of these other scenarios. So yeah, but hey, if he can do it, we can too. Here's the mystery question, Tom. For those of you who haven't tuned in before, we always do kind of a fun question. We talk a lot about revenue, a lot about business problems, and we try to end the show with something fun. So we talked about these personnel, whether it's leaders or employees, whatever. We'll call them maybe toxic rainmakers because I like that term. And the impact on organizations is massive. It touches every single point. Again, back to our go-to-market conversation. If you had the ability to build an app, let's say, or AI, whatever you want to use in today's world, what's the first thing that you program into the app to identify what a potential toxic rainmaker would be? What's the very first nuance that you're like, this is the one thing I need to know immediately?
I want to know if there's an ego present. Meaning, am I so awesome? And I was this in my early mid-20s. I took a role. I thought that was the bee's knees. I ended up being a smashing failure at it. And I use that in some reference points now. I'm a lot more comfortable talking about that failure. At that age, ego runs into play. I was the smartest guy in the room or near the smartest guy in the room. And I'm a smart guy. Don't get me wrong. I am not the smartest guy in the room. And so ego, if I could measure ego or find a way to have people self-diagnose, maybe it's a contrived or influenced or manipulated type of question, but I want to have some sense of, do you think you're the smartest person in the room? Because if so, I'm probably not going to be able to help you.
I think that's a great app. So some sort of ego meter, because I have to imagine every confident leader has an ego, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just you're talking about the toxic ego and the yeah. Gotcha.
My doesn't stink.
Gotcha.
So, I think if you can't recognize that, then, and if you have a C-suite person who is in that framework, all right, there's a trouble spot. How far are you really going to get? At some point, like, you're safe now, but at some point, you're not going to be.
Egometer.ai coming to you soon, ladies and gentlemen. Tom, where can people find you? If they're interested and they want to learn more about you or tune into your podcast, LinkedIn, is that the best?
Yeah, LinkedIn is an awesome place to find me. I do most of my social sharing, sometimes too much, but that's all good fun. I think I like folks to see the real me, so LinkedIn is a great portal for that. I do post a good amount of content there. The podcast is linked there. I have different shows that'll connect it in there. My website can be found through there, buildbetterculture.com if you're curious. But LinkedIn is a great place because you get all sorts of commentary. And we were talking about the video lengths earlier. I'm like, all right, so most of my short form stuff fits there, but I do get wordy. So apologies, but not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. But LinkedIn, are there more than one Tom Schin? I always ask this because
there are 3 of me that I know of. There's one in Queens. I don't know if he's still alive. There's one in Austria. And then there's me. So
there's 3 Tom. We're fact checking this, ladies and gentlemen, but 3 Tom Shins in the world. So I always ask that question because that's one of the biggest pain points when I tell people to come find Chris Ryan. Not common at all. So, okay. No. So LinkedIn, buildbetterculture.com. You already said that. Tom Schin, ladies and gentlemen. Tom, thanks for coming out.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate the limelight and the great conversation, the great questions.
I got lots of stuff that we have to do for our company, so good to know. Ladies and gentlemen, another episode. Thank you for tuning in. GTM, Get the Money Live. I'm Chris Ryan, your host. And once again, Tom Schin from Build Better Culture. Bye, guys.
We go